Your first guitar should not just be a cheap one. Gonna give you 10 reasons. Hey everybody, just me again, Wayne, or if you prefer your metal professor. First, thanks for clicking on this video from the literally millions you could have chosen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, by a cheap guitar, I don't mean necessarily an inexpensive guitar. I mean a cheaply made, poorly made one, although on a Venn diagram there'd be a lot of overlap there. It is best not to just run out and get the least expensive guitar you can find for your first guitar or the first guitar of someone else if you're buying it as a gift or something like that. If that first guitar is reasonably easy to play, and I don't mean easy because you're skilled at it, I mean physically conducive to being played, then you or whoever is likely to make much more progress, much more quickly than on an instrument that is not particularly player friendly. And if you make more progress more quickly, you are less likely to get frustrated and therefore more likely to stick with the project and less likely to end up with a pile of money just sitting in the corner of the closet. As you gain more skills, as you grow as a guitar player, there will come a time when you want to do things on the guitar that a cheaply made guitar just might not let you do. Tapping, bends, finger vibratos, and other things. So why not start out with a guitar that you can grow with, at least for a while? If you want to play hard rock or metal, you're probably going to want a guitar that has humbucking pickups, usually just called humbuckers, which look a lot more like that one or that one than they do like these. Many very inexpensive and often very cheaply made first guitars just come with these, which are called single coil pickups. Humbucking pickups produce a sound that has more bass and less tinny sounding, a bit less irritating treble than single coils do. So it's easier to get a full sound on these than it is on these. So if you want to play some Black Sabbath or some Judas Priest or some Iron Maiden or even some AC/DC, you're going to want a guitar that allows you to at least approximate the sound you hear on the record. So you're going to want a guitar with at least one humbucking pickup, and those usually cost a little bit more than these. Next reason to spend a little more on a guitar rather than getting the cheapest possible one is that if the action on the guitar, which refers to how high the strings are above the fretboard, if the action is crazy high, well, then it's going to be difficult to do anything. Many inexpensive guitars, and some very expensive ones, have sharp fret ends. The frets are those horizontal pieces of metal. Here, these are frets. Often very inexpensive guitars have ends on the frets that are sharp, so they're very uncomfortable to play. And of course, if it's uncomfortable or even painful to play that guitar, you're probably not going to do much of it. The neck of the guitar needs to be fairly easy to move your hand around on. What's called a satin finish is best, but you can get guitars with various levels of satin finish. Most very inexpensive guitars have just enough finish on the neck to prevent splinters, and that's about it. So go for a neck that you can move your hand around on, because it's just going to be easier to switch chords, and when you get into playing lead stuff, riffs, individual notes, you want to be able to move your hand around without having your skin get stuck, either because the neck is super glossy or not finished enough. Another thing about the neck, it doesn't have to be paper thin by any means, but if the neck is so thick that it's, the size of the business end of a baseball bat, it's going to be difficult to play. So go for a guitar that has a neck that does not remind you of a log. If you or whoever get to the point where you find that you are needing to switch pickups to get different tones while playing a song, you'll want a guitar where that pickup selector switch is pretty easy to get to, which usually is going to mean under the strings somewhere rather than way out of reach, so you'd have to move your entire arm to get up to the switch. Les Paul style guitars, I'm looking at you. Super cheap guitars very often have unreliable tuning machines. Those things at the top of the guitar that you use to, well, tune the strings. And if your guitar goes out of tune a lot, again, frustration. Okay, the next reason not to get a cheap guitar for the first guitar. Lots and lots of cheap guitars come with tremolo systems, which are more correctly known as vibratos, but most people just say trem systems. That's this thing, right? It's got that bar at the bottom of the body of the guitar there that lets you go and do other things like that as well. Super cool sounds. Don't get one, okay? And there are a couple of reasons. The first reason is that if you're just learning guitar, you don't need a vibrato system anyway. Wait until you have got, some kind of grasp over chords and scales and things like that, and you're feeling comfortable on the fretboard, as it were. Then you can work in some vibrato. But when you're first starting, it's just a distraction. What's worse, it's a distraction that will throw your guitar out of tune, and that gets really, really frustrating. Now, why will it do that, you ask me? Oh, I'll tell you why. Well, because using the vibrato necessarily shortens or lengthens the strings, depending upon whether you're pushing or pulling it. And the big thing is that most super inexpensive guitars come with vibrato systems like this one. Old-timey 6-screw things, and not to put too fine a point on it, but they suck. You use those once or twice and your whole guitar is thrown out of tune, and having to stop and retune every few minutes just because you bump that thing, that gets old real fast. Now, this sort of vibrato, if I can get my strap out of the way, these are actually good. This is a Floyd Rose brand vibrato. And Floyd Rose and a few other companies make these. You see the strings going down there, and they've got a locking nut here at the top of the neck. Those are great because they keep your strings largely from going out of tune, and you can do a lot more stuff with them. But here's the thing. They are also difficult to get the hang of. Well, they're easier to use than these because sometimes these are really stiff and they're just irritating. These are much better systems, but having said that, I'm going to quote my friend Guitar Max Carlisle. If you don't know Max's YouTube channel, you're missing out. I'll put a link. Changing strings on a Floyd Rose or similar vibrato is a nightmare. Beginners have the tendency to want to just take off all the strings and then put them all back on. Well, if you take off all the strings and you've got this kind of vibrato system, you've kind of screwed yourself because getting those things back on, getting the guitar in tune, getting the string action back where it needs to be is, if you don't know what you're doing, it is really, really difficult. So for your first guitar, avoid a vibrato system. Avoid a vibrato system at all if you can. And, but if you're just really, really, really dead set on one, well, try to find the guitar you can afford that has one of these. But your best bet is to avoid them. And that's a problem because so many beginner guitars have these. But, there is a solution. You can block this off so that it doesn't work. And therefore it's not a distraction. But wait, you say, how do I do that? I'll show you that in a future video. Final reason to spend a little more money on that first guitar. If you're a parent and you're getting that guitar for your kid, you don't want your kid to get frustrated and stop just because you got the cheapest guitar you could find and it turns out to be, if I may employ the vernacular, a piece of crap. So spend a little more money, spend that extra $100 or $150 or whatever, or sometimes less than that, and get a guitar that is going to work out for the time being so your kid doesn't just get frustrated and stop. You can get a pretty good guitar for relatively little money these days. You can spend $200, $250, $300, sometimes a little bit less, and get an instrument that is going to grow with you or grow with whoever you've got the instrument for and not cause a bunch of frustration. Here's an example. This is a Harley Benton brand guitar. Oh, and by the way, once this video has been out for more than a few days, you'll almost surely see various snarking in the comments section about how Harley Bentons are unreliable, cheap, they're just stupid, strictly for beginners. Ignore those because those comments are incorrect. This guitar cost me less than $250. That includes shipping from Germany, and it is literally a professional grade instrument. There is nothing about this guitar that is not really, really good and really, really reliable. Now, do most companies offer professional level instruments for under $250? No, they don't. But Harley Benton does, and you can get a much better than strictly beginner level instrument from companies including Ibanez and many others. Just, do your research. So there you go, 10 reasons to spend just a little bit more on that first guitar rather than running out and getting the most inexpensive thing you can find. Spend a little more and you'll be a lot happier and a lot more likely to make progress, stick with it, and actually become that guitar player that you want to be. All right, now after all that advice, all those reasons you should spend just a little bit more and not get a super cheap guitar, you're probably asking, well, how can I tell other than the price tag? Because there are some guitars that cost a lot that are not good, and there are some guitars that are very inexpensive that are quite good. How can I tell, you might say? Especially because so many of them look just the same to the untrained eye. That's what we're going to talk about in the next video when you are faced with all these, quote, entry-level, end quote, guitars that all look the same. How do you discern which are worth getting and which aren't? We'll talk about that next time, so come on back. Okay, that's what I've got, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are awesome. If you liked it, please subscribe. Leave a comment, give a thumbs up, all that kind of thing. You're awesome. Again, I'll talk to you soon.